Hello and welcome friends. In Indian economy, in unit 4 up till now we have discussed poverty. We talked about the different types of poverty. We understood the difference between absolute and relative poverty. We took an example to do that as well. We talked about the secondary poverty and how urban poverty in a way could be said to be the extension of rural poverty. We understood the various methodologies used to fix poverty line. We talked about the Planning Commission and the Dandekar and Rath approach. We talked about the more recent Suresh Tendulkar approach, and we also talked about the multidimensional poverty index, which was developed by UNDP and Oxford University. We talked about how various estimates differ according to the methodologies that they have used. And we also talked about the World Bank International Poverty Line and what basically it means. Specifically, we talked about purchase power parity terms, and we actually talked about PPP, purchase power parity, in context of defining the international poverty line. Then we moved over to measurement of poverty. Now remember that when we talked about the measurement of poverty, we said that the organization which is actually carrying out this measurement is known as National Sample Survey Organization, which works under the Statistics and Program Implementation Ministry. Why this is important, you will get to know in a few minutes from now. We talked about the causes of poverty. We talked about how the various schemes have been implemented since independence to eradicate poverty. We talked about economic inequality also in a particular session. We talked about how gross inequality index gives us an estimate of the economic inequality prevailing in a particular country. We took example of India. Then we started discussing about unemployment, and we talked about the various types of unemployment which are there. Now is the time for us to understand how the unemployment rates are measured in the economy. Now please understand there are different agencies involved in measuring unemployment rates. For example, NSSO. Just a little while ago I said, why am I talking about NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, would be clear in a few minutes now. I hope now it is clear to you, because NSSO, the agency which was involved in measurement of poverty, is also one of the agencies which is measuring unemployment rates in the economy. Now let me tell you, why do we have sample surveys? Why can't we have some other methodology? Please understand there are two things, and you might have read about them in research methodology. One is the sample survey, the other one is census. Census, you talk to every single unit. You collect data from every single unit in the population. Sample, you only collect data from a small portion of the population. You do not collect data from all the population. Only a small sample is taken, and based on the data that is obtained from this small sample, we do an approximation for the whole population. Let me tell you that in India, and I have talked about this earlier also, censuses, they take place every 10 years. Decadal census takes place. So last census was conducted in 2011, and this one, the current one, was earlier scheduled to start in 2021, but it could not start because of the pandemic, and it is about to start in a few months from now. Now, in census, the authorities would record data of each and every unit in the population, which means if we have got 140 crore people, they would collect data of every single unit. They would contact every single household. For example, if there are around 27 crore families in India, why am I saying that there are 27 crore families in India? I hope you remember that I had said earlier that in India, the average family size is considered to be of 5 members. So naturally 27 into 5 is 135 crore. So I am saying there are around 27 to 28 crore families in India. Fine. So every single family, every single household will be contacted, and the data would be connected. Now this would basically be an example of a census. But naturally you know that this is going to be a very time consuming process. It's going to be a very costly process. That is the reason why we have census only once in 10 years. So what is the other option do we have to collect the data, unemployment data? The other option that we have is sample survey. Now these sample surveys, since only a small portion of the population is contacted and the data is collected from that particular portion, naturally they are going to cost you less time, and they would also be less expensive. And if they are done in an appropriate fashion, then naturally what will happen is the results would correspond to reality, which means whatever results we are obtaining from the sample surveys would correspond to the results which can be obtained from the census. They would actually be depicting what the overall population is doing. So that is why NSSO conducts these kind of surveys. Let me give an example of the various exit interviews which take place after the elections, and they predict the seats won by different parties, and most of the time they are correct. So this is an example of how sample surveys can also help you predict about the whole population. So instead of just contacting all 135 140 crore people, all 27 28 crore families, what we do is we only contact maybe 10 20 lakh people, and based on the findings we try to estimate the unemployment figure for the whole population. Fine. And as I said, and we have seen earlier in polls, in opinion polls and exit polls, which are conducted by various newspapers and various television news channels, you have seen that the results are very very close to reality. They are very very accurate if you conduct the sample survey in a precise manner. So this is what NSSO does. Then there is another organization, the Employee Provident Fund organization, which is under the Ministry of Labour, which also helps us find out the unemployment rates. Now through EPF enrollments, now let me give you a background of what do I mean by EPF enrollments. Now see, there's a law in India which says that those who are earning less than a particular amount, if they join an organization, a provident fund account in their name has to be opened up with EPFO, Employee Provident Fund Organization. Provident fund is Bhavishya Nidhi. So this account has to be opened up with EPFO. Now why is this account opened? It will basically get contribution from the employee, the worker who has joined the organization, and the employer. So a particular percentage of the overall salary, basic salary of the worker would be deducted by the employer, and it would be deposited in his EPFO account. A matching contribution would be made by the employer. Let me give you an example. Supposing I am working as a shop floor worker. Shop floor worker is somebody who is working, a blue collar worker who does the physical labor, right? So if I have joined Maruti as a shop floor worker, Maruti now is obliged to open up my account with EPFO. Not only this, they are also obliged to deduct some salary which has been specified in the law. What is the amount of salary that would be deducted? So they would be deducting that salary from that portion from my salary, and would be depositing in my EPFO account, which would be opened up with the Employee Provident Fund organization. Fine. They would again, Maruti would also have to make a matching contribution. So for example, if they are deducting rupees 700 from my salary to deposit to EPFO, to deposit to my EPF account, 700, the same amount will also have to be contributed by them. A matching contribution will have to be made by them. And what is the objective behind these kind of Employee Provident Fund accounts? So that when in future there might be some emergency requirements, for example, let's say if there is a severe illness in the family, the worker can make use of this money which has been deposited with the EPFO in his name, right? Likewise, for example, if you have to get your children married, then also you can withdraw this amount from your EPF account. Supposing there is severe illness in the family, you can do that. Supposing you want to construct a house, also you can withdraw this amount which has been deposited in the account opened up in your name. So this is the basic idea behind having an EPF account and making sure that every single employee, every single blue collar worker has an EPF account. Fine. Now, naturally, the number of people who have been enrolled into EPF, the number of accounts, new accounts which have been opened up in the last few months or maybe in the last year with the Employee Provident Fund organization, can give you an idea as to how many people have got jobs in the organized sector. So this will give you an idea as to how many jobs have been generated in the organized sector. Why am I saying organized sector? You won't find such accounts for unorganized sector like maybe a rickshawala or maybe a small bakery. Fine. So for organized sector, for example, Maruti Suzuki, how many workers are working there? So we can get to know just by looking at the EPF enrollments, how many new accounts have been opened up will give us an idea as to how many people have been given away jobs by Maruti, and this way we can understand how many jobs have been generated in the economy, and this can be used to calculate the unemployment rate. Then we also have Ministry of Corporate Affairs. I hope you know what Ministry of Corporate Affairs does. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs monitors the various corporates, various industries, various private firms operating in the economy, and there is a particular provision that all these companies, all these corporate firms, they have to file a return with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on a periodic basis. Now, this return also contains information about the new employees which have been hired and the overall number of workers which have been hired by that particular firm. Now, this again gives us an idea as to how many jobs have been generated in the private sector at least, and what is the employment rate and what is the unemployment rate in the economy. Fine, so these three agencies are basically involved in measuring unemployment data. Right? Now let us talk about the unemployment estimates which are conducted by NSSO. So what does the NSSO do? NSSO basically conducts the survey and they make three types of estimates. The first estimate is known as the usual status. What do we mean by usual status? Long-term unemployment estimation. Chronic. Chronic is long-term. Chronic disease is something that continues for a long period of time. Fine, so that is a chronic disease. For example, a blood pressure. The problem of hypertension is a chronic disease. So that is an example of chronic. So long-term unemployment estimation is done through usual status. So they find out usual status unemployment. The reference period is longer, as I said, preceding 1 year. So this estimate is for the 1 full year. And who is unemployment? Who is unemployed? As far as this particular status is concerned, usual status unemployment surveys are concerned, those who have not been working, though they were available for work. Now they were available for work, but they were not working. They were willing to work, they were available, but they could not find any work for most of the period. And most of the period would mean more than half of the year, more than or equal to 180 days. So 180 days or more than that. So if a particular worker has been available for work in the last 1 year, but he has got the work only for 5 months, then he would be considered to be unemployment as far as usual status estimates are concerned. He would be considered as unemployed as far as usual status estimates are concerned. But if he has worked for 181 days, 6 months and 1 day, then he would not be considered unemployment. And this way, unemployment is found out using the usual status surveys. Then we have another kind of surveys. I said there are 3 kinds of surveys. We'll be discussing all of them. Right now we are going to discuss current weekly status. Now you can understand what do we mean by current weekly status. Who will be unemployed? Not working even for 1 hour in the preceding 1 week, despite being available for work. So the worker is available for work, and we will find out from him as to whether he has got work in the last 1 week. We are not going to be concerned about what has happened in the last 1 year. We are only going to be concerned with what has happened in the last 1 week, preceding 1 week. And that is why they are said current weekly status. Current, present weekly status. So if somebody has not worked even for 1 hour in preceding 1 week, he would be considered to be unemployed, which means if somebody has worked for 5 days and he could not find job for the 6th day in the last 1 week, then he would be considered to be unemployment. So even if you do not find work for just 1 hour, you would be considered unemployed by this particular survey, in this particular survey. Then we have the current daily status. Same thing, we are not going to worry about the last 1 year as was the case in usual status. We are only going to worry about the last 1 day. Weekly we took into consideration last 1 week. In daily we would take into consideration only the last 1 day. Is that fine? That is why it is known as current daily status. Right? So the reference period here is 1 week. The reference period here is 1 day. And for usual status the reference period is 1 year. Fine? Now, who would be considered to be employed? If the person has worked for more than 4 hours, the normal working day is considered to have around 8 hours, right? If he has been working for more than 4 hours, more than half of the day, then he would be considered to be employed for the full day. If he is working for 1 to 4 hours, he would be considered to be employed only for half of the day, right? And if he has worked even lesser than this, he has not worked for 1 hour, he has worked for less than 1 hour, he has not at all found work, then he would be considered to be unemployed as far as current daily status is concerned. Is that fine? So I hope you understand the difference between these three different estimates. All of them are made by NSSO. In the usual status, the NSSO inquires from the people when they are conducting this survey. From the sample units, it inquires how many days they have worked in the last 1 year. Here in current weekly status, it would inquire how many hours have they worked in the last 1 week. Even if they have not worked for 1 hour, they would be counted as unemployed. Here it would ask how many hours have you worked in the last 1 day. So there's a difference in these different estimates. Fine. So this gives you chronic unemployment, while this gives you temporary unemployment. Or for example, season employment can be found out using this, but it cannot be found out using this. A person who is employed for 5 months in a year, if we go to him and ask for usual status, or let's say he's been working for 7 months in a year, if he asks for his usual status, he would be considered to be employed because he has been working for more than 6 months. But at times he may not be found to be currently unemployed. Current weekly status, if I try to find out, he could be unemployed. Why? Because he might not have worked in the last 1 week, though he has worked for 7 months in the last 1 year, right? So there's a difference in these three different estimates. So that's all for today, and tomorrow we'll talk about unemployment in India and we'll talk about the current scenario. Thank you very much for your time.